Yo, what's up guys? Welcome to another Magic the Gathering video. This time we're looking at another EDH, Elder Dragon Highlander deck that I own. And last time we were in Dimir colors, so blue-black, and this time we're going Boros, which means red and white. So, first off, let's look at which general we're using in this one. We are using Aurelia the Warleader. She's a bit of a costly general for 6 mana in total, 2 red, 2 white and 2 colorless. But she's pretty cool creature. She is a legendary angel. She has flying, vigilance and haste. She's a 3/4, and whenever Aurelia the Warleader attacks for the first time each turn, untap all creatures you control. After this phase, there is an additional combat phase. So, this gives you like a general direction which this deck is going. You could say it's kind of a Voltron deck, but you don't pile all your stuff onto one creature. You attack and you generate multiple combat phases and have creatures that go very well with multiple combat phases. So let's look through our arsenal of creatures, spells and everything and see what we got. So first off we have Adriana, Captain of the Guard. She is from Conspiracy and she has some very special abilities that you don't find in other sets. She has melee, which says whenever this creature attacks it gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each opponent you attacked with a creature this combat. Meaning if you attack 3 different players, this creature gets +3/+3. And also, she has other creatures you control have melee. And just a side note, melee can stack. So if you somehow have another creature that gives melee to all your creatures, it will trigger twice. Then we have Anya, Merciless Angel. She is a 4/4 flyer. She gets +3/+3 for each opponent whose life total is less than half of his starting life. So in EDH that would be 20 or less. And as long opponent's life total is less than half of his or her starting life, any opponent, she is indestructible. This works, I think, very well with this deck because you're gonna beat down pretty fast. So you're gonna have a pretty beefy creature very fast. Also, we're featuring here Archangel Avacyn, 4/4 flash, flying, vigilance. She's very cool because you can save your creatures when she comes into play. All your creatures gain indestructible until end of turn, so you can survive wrath type effects. And when a non-angel creature you control dies, she transforms into what's she called? Avacyn the Purifier. There we go. Avacyn the Purifier. When this creature transforms into Avacyn the Purifier, it deals 3 damage to each other creature and each opponent. So it's like a mini Wrath, kinda. Deals some damage to all the creatures. It can take out some nasty little buggers, but I mainly play her for her first sight, for that indestructible flash effect, basically. Archetype of aggressions, all your creatures have trample, opponents' creatures cannot have trample and lose trample if they have. I think it's a pretty solid card. Then Balefire Legions, all white creatures +1/+1, all red creatures +1/+1, and whenever a red spell, you play a red spell, this thing deals 3 damage to a target player, and whenever you play a white spell, you gain 3 life. And it doesn't matter what you do, you pretty much always get something out of it, as long as this is on the field. The Banisher Priest, basically I like to have an exile effect like this on a creature in this kind of deck, so I have more bodies to pile in each combat phase. Even though it's a pretty fragile removal, because the removed creature comes back if the Banisher Priest dies. There's Basandra, the Battle Seraph, which makes the game a lot more controllable for you because she prevents players from casting spells during combat. This includes you, and this includes every combat, not just yours. So as long as she is on the battlefield, combat tricks are not a thing. Boros Battle Shaver is up next. At the beginning of each combat, up to 1 target creature attacks or blocks this combat, if able, and up to 1 target creature can't attack or block this combat. So first up, this is at the beginning of each combat. So this also means, again, at the beginning of an opponent's combat, you can force them to attack. And if they attack another player, you can make another player's creature not block. So you can like incentivize other people to attack each other. It's pretty fun. And if you get multiple combat phases, that triggers again and again and again. Boros Reckoner, I just like this one because he gets first strike so easily. And whenever somebody tries to take care of this guy with damage spells, it fires back a little bit. Cyclops of Eternal Fury, haste for everybody. It's always good in a deck like this. Figure of Destiny. It's kind of special. If it's in your opening hand and you can play this on turn 1, it has to be dealt with. It's just a fact, because if you can like run out this thing in, I don't know, in turn 5 or 6 and you have an 8/8 by then, you know, that's annoying. That's really annoying. So it needs to be taken care of. The Firefist Striker, this is a thing that synergizes very well with multiple combat phases. He has Battalion, and whenever he and at least 2 other creatures attack, target creature cannot block this turn. This occurs every combat phase. So if I have 3 combat phases, that triggers 3 times. 1 after each other, of course, but still, it lasts until end of turn, so that's pretty nice. Same with the Firemain Avenger. The Battalion ability here is that it deals 3 damage to target creature or player, and I gain 3 life, so I can blast their creatures while I'm attacking multiple times. Then the Foundry Champion, when he enters the battlefield, he deals damage to target creature or player equal the number of creatures I control. Since I tend to run out multiple creatures, if possible, to get a big attack, this one can take care of a blocker. And also, with red mana, you can pump in +1/+0, and you can do it multiple times. And with white mana, you can pump in +0/+1. She is brutal. Gisela, Blade of Gold Knight, a legendary angel flying first strike. She is a 5/5. And if a source would deal damage to an opponent or a permanent an opponent controls, that source deals double that damage to that player or permanent instead. And if a source would deal damage to you or a permanent you control, prevent half of that damage rounded up. So this has 2 sides. One is the politics side of things, where if people attack each other, they deal double damage, which is pretty fun. And of course, if they attack you, it's only half of the damage. And on the other hand, it makes your attack an absolute beast. With multiple combat phases, you have to be really up on your math game to calculate the damage value correctly. So, Goblin Wardriver. He has Battle Cry, which makes whenever this creature attacks, each other attacking creature gets +1/+0. Same thing here. Whenever an additional combat happens, the +1/+0 from the previous one stays, and he gets another one. And he does that for every creature, so it's fantastic. Grenzo Havoc Raiser, whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, choose one, either goat target creature, which is also an ability from Conspiracy, from the Conspiracy block. Goat, as far as I remember, is it makes a creature attack the next time it could, until your, I think, next turn it must attack. But his other ability is actually much more fun. The other ability is exile the top card of that player's library. Until end of turn you may cast that card, and, here comes the kicker, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast it. This works in EDH. This is one of the only ways I know to produce mana or play spells with mana that are not on your colors. So every once in a while you'll rip a huge spell from an opponent's library. It's just a fun thing. The Henwire Garrison. Whenever this thing attacks, it puts 2 1/1 red human soldiers, no, just human tokens onto the battlefield attacking. Again, multiple combat phases, yay. And just because, if you're asking, yes, I'm playing the second part of this card, the Henwire Battlements, and we'll look at what it does when we get to the land. Then Heliod, God of the Sun. I'm just liking this one because it's indestructible and other creatures have vigilance. It makes the deck a bit more defensible against other heavy attackers. Hero of Oxrid Ridge, Battlecry, again, he has haste on itself, that is nice. And creatures with power in 1 or less cannot block whenever he attacks. which is also pretty neat. The Ingoteur is an artifact destroy creature for 5 technically, but you can evoke it for 1, so it's flexible. And Masako the Humorless, I really like this card. You can play her whenever you could play an instant, so she has flash basically. And it says tapped creatures you control may block as though they were untapped. So whenever somebody tries to get funny with you after an all-out attack, you play her and pretty much smite down whatever attack they had. Mirror Entity, it's a changeling and he has the ability to X until end of turn. Creature you control have base power and toughness X and gain all creature types. If you have a lot of mana open and a lot of creatures out, this can be devastating, I tell you that. Novelist of War, attacking creatures you control get +2/+0, fits with the deck strategy. Odric, Lunar Marshal, at the beginning of each combat, creatures you control gain first strike. Basically, if you control a creature that has first strike. Same is true for flying, death dodge, yada yada yada, all the other abilities. So this takes advantage of my angels that I have in the deck, because angels tend to have a lot of abilities. First strike, vigilance, flying, and it basically transfers these abilities to all my other creatures. Then the Odrune Veteran, he has Battalion. Whenever he attacks he gets double strike, which, it only triggers on him, but a 3/1 with double strike in a deck with multiple combat phases, that actually hurts. I might actually replace this one if I find something better, but yeah. Rhea Dawnbringer, I think she's a classical card if you play white. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may return target creature card from your graveyard to play. Yeah, if she sticks for a round, you might win the game. The Sunholm Enforcer is also one that I might replace at one point in time. He has lifelink. Well, it doesn't say he has lifelink, but whenever he deals combat damage, you gain that much life. And for 1 and red, you can pump him. Sunholm Guildmage, you can make creatures +1/+0 and create tokens with haste. I like this because of utility. And because, if you have a lot of mana open and nothing to do at the end of the opponent's turn before your turn, just create some tokens, why not? Tajik, Blade of the Legion, he gets pretty beastly with multiple combat phases, because each time he attacks with 2 or more other creatures, he gets +5/+5 until end of turn. So 2 combat phases already make him +10/+10, it's pretty vicious. Victory's Herald, whenever he attacks, all your creatures gain flying and lifelink, which makes you basically unkillable if one of these attacks hit, or basically if 2 combat phases hit. And Warmight Infantry gets +2/+0 whenever it and 2 other creatures attack. So these were my creatures, we had a lot of it, 33 in total with the general. So the Boros Charm, it gives you a lot of versatility. It can be a burn spell against players. If somebody's very low, just finish them off. It protects your permanents by making them indestructible until end of turn, and it can give something double strike. And boy, don't underestimate double strike in a deck that has multiple combat phases. That will rack up quickly. We'll do a funny little calculation at the end of this review, so to speak. Next up, board wipe, Fated Retribution, destroy all creatures and planeswalkers. If it's your turn, scry 2. It's pretty fun. Fire at Will, it's kind of a flavor card for me because it costs red-white 3 times. It deals 3 damage divided among blocking and attacking creatures as you desire. It can be pretty nice, and because it's very flexible in its mana cost, you can cast it at most times, but yeah, the effect is not that big, that's true. Glimpse of the Sun God, tap X creatures, scry 1. I think that is basically a finisher. If somebody has set up a good block, just run him over. Intimidation Bolt, it can give you that 1 more turn that you need. You deal damage to something, hopefully kill it, and all other creatures cannot attack this turn. It's also just like a kill spell for sometimes, but other times you can really prevent people from attacking you and then swing in for the finishing move. Lightning Helix, again, 3 damage to target creature or player and gain 3 life. Path to Exile, of course. Rally the Ancestors, this can also be a pretty badass finisher. So you return each card creature card with combat mana cost X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, and then you exile those creatures at the beginning of your next upkeep. So you keep them for a whole turn, but of course you want to finish the enemy in that one turn. So it's X, white, white. So in the late game this can be an absolute blowout. Write Down is an absolute overperformer for me. This card has, whenever I played it, it's been an absolute pleasure. Basically, it destroys a target blocking creature, and the creature that were blocked by that creature gain trample. So attack with your 20/20. Well, I block it with my 1/1 guy. Sykes, write down 20 damage. It's absolutely vicious. It can finish opponents off. Then Warleader's Helix, again 4 damage to target creature or player. It's a burn spell basically, so it's like target removal. Not the best one, I admit, but it's cool. Sorcery, we have only 5. We have Angel's Edict and Iona's Judgment, which is basically the same card. It really is. I mean, it costs both 4 and a white, and it says exile target creature or enchantment, and both have like to do with angels exiling something. So it's really, functional speaking, it's the same goddamn card. There's Terminus, which is always fun. If you get this off a miracle trigger, then it's just slamming time. I love this. Whenever you rip this off the top of your library in your desperate moments, it's beautiful. And Waves of Aggression, this is one of the other ways to get multiple combat phases. So basically this just creates, after this main phase you get an additional combat phase. And there's also World at War, which does the same. There's a slight difference. Wave of Aggression has also Retrace, which means you can play it from the graveyard if you have a land in your hand and you discard it. World at War, on the other hand, has Rebound, which means you play it and next turn you may play it again for free. Right, off to the artifacts. We have Cluestone, Keyrune and Signet, all of Boros colors of course. The Dispeller Capsula to get rid of artifacts and enchantments. Elixir of Immortality, I put this in almost all of my decks, I find. Because sometimes I just love to shuffle my graveyard into my library again. Expedition Map, that's obvious, land searching. Relic of Progenitus, I put this in here basically because sometimes decks that play a lot from their grave can really stifle you in your attack, because oftentimes they will have creatures that come back every turn, again and again and again, so you cannot really attack. So this is your way to get rid of these creatures. Soul Ring, obviously, and Wayfarer's Bubble for more lands. Now we have some enchantments. Assemble the Legion, which at the beginning of your upkeep puts a muster counter on this card, and then you put a 1/1 red and white soldier token with haste onto the battlefield for each muster counter on Assemble the Legion. So you just play this and let it grow basically. You get 1 more soldier each turn. You get 1 at the first turn, 2, and then 3, and then 4, and 5. If they don't destroy it, you'll have a Legion. That's why it's called Assemble the Legion, I suppose. So yeah, if you get this early, it's a really good card and they need to get rid of it. Cage of Hands, it's like a pacifism, but with a special ability. You can, for 1 and a white, return it to your owner, to your hand. 5-Alarm Fire. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage, which means to a player or to a creature, doesn't matter, put a blaze counter on 5-Alarm Fire. Then remove 5 blaze counters from this thing and it deals 5 damage to target creature or player. Believe me, if you have this out, this will get filled fast. Very fast. So you can use this as a removal spell to just ping off creatures every once in a while, or if you really need to get rid of somebody, just ping him down for 5. If you have like 2 creatures out, well, Aurelia and 1 other creatures, you can fill this in 1 combat phase almost. It's ridiculous. Or in 1 turn, rather. Gleam of Battle. Whenever a creature you control attacks puts a 1/1 counter on it. Yeah, multiple combat phases makes this thing absolutely ridiculous. Glory of Warfare, while it's your turn, creatures get +2/+0, and while it's not your turn, your creatures get +0/+2. Makes you better offensive in your turn and defensive in the other turns. Gratuitous Violence, it doubles damage basically. The problem is it doubles for everybody, so if you play this, be alarmed if you don't finish your opponents off and they have something big. they will swing at you. But yeah, it's a ridiculous card, and if you play it at the right moment, you'll just blow people out of the water. Oblivion Ring, good removal. Pacifism, I have it in here as well, even though I like actually Cage of Hands a bit more. Quarantine Field is like a massive Oblivion Ring. You pay XX and 2 white, and then you exile X creatures as long as Isolation Field is on the battlefield. So yeah, it's pretty nasty, but just as a reminder, if this gets exiled or destroyed, all the nice little things come back again. Rise of the Hobgoblins, when you play it, you may pay X. If you do, put X 1/1 red and white goblin soldier creature tokens onto the battlefield. I play this basically for the other ability at the bottom. For 1 red or 1 white, depends on what you want to pay. Red creatures and white creatures you control gain first strike. So you can give all your things first strike for 1 mana. I really dig this. There's also the Spirit Mantle, +1/+1 and protection from creatures. I really like this aura, especially if you have a big hitter that needs to get through. Yeah, this has been all the spells. Now the lands are nothing special. We have a lot of these double lands, Arid Mesa, Battlefield Forge, the Boros things, Evolving Wilds. The only other special thing, of course, is the Henwire Battlements. And Henwire Battlements, the land itself is not that cool. It gives you a colorless mana, one of these diamond-shaped ones for the Eldrazi. And for red and tap, it can make a creature get haste until end of turn. But if this thing and Henwire Garrison is on the field, you may pay 3 and red, and then you fuse them, which is a thing from Eldritch Moon. Yeah, that's what it was called. You can fuse them, so you put 2 cards together, like you know, like Yu-Gi-Oh, the Exodia thingy, and they become Henwire, the Rating Township, which is a pretty nasty creature. It's a 7/4 trample haste, and whenever it attacks, you put 2 free 2 colorless Eldrazi horror creature tokens onto the battlefield attacking. So yeah, if you get this out, multiple combat phases, absolutely brutal. Now, shall we do a little bit of math? Let's say we have 3 creatures on the field. Let's go with 3 angels. Anya the Merciless, Aurelia the Warleader, and Gisela, Blade of Gold Knight. So power in total on the battlefield, in theory, is 8, 12. So let's see how insane we can go. Let's say we attack, so that's 12 damage. Aurelia triggers, gives us another combat phase, that's another 12 damage. We play, well, the best possibility would be, of course, if World of War would come off Rebound, so we get another combat phase. That's the 3rd one, so that's another 12 damage for 36 in total now. Then we play Waves of Aggression, that's another 12, 48. And then we retrace Waves of Aggression for another 12, so that's 50 damage. Now, that's not the end, of course, of that calculation, because, first of all, Gisela makes our damage doubled. So we're not at 60 damage, we're at 120 damage already. Now, if we suppose that Gratuitous Violence is in play, that means we double this again to 240 damage. So yeah, you can see, even with 3 creatures, just 3 creatures, you can put out 240 damage if you play your cards right. Yeah, it can get pretty ridiculous. So as you can see, this is a pretty aggressive deck. It absolutely beats down if it gets a fine mana curve. If your lands, if you hit your land drops, get a good cards in hand, you can eliminate people in a few turns. You really can. The problem is if you play against a really strong control deck that is always on top of you, always countering things, always bouncing things, then it's getting annoying. Still, even then, you might every once in a while you might sneak some damage through with your haste creatures, but still, I think it struggles a bit against good setup control decks, and of course against things like Ghostly Prison and stuff like that. That stops this deck, I think. Unless, of course, you exile the Ghostly Prison. But still, I think it's a solid deck, and it's a bit something different from the thing we had last time, this very scheming and controlling deck that steals your stuff. This is just smashing faces, and it's absolutely beautiful. So yeah, this has been it for this time. Next time we're gonna look at another EDH. I think next time we're gonna look at green reds, which would be Gruul, right? Yeah, Gruul. Alright, so I hope you guys enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time.